On this planet, you have many governments. So if you're dealing with one government, that's one cosmos. When you're dealing with one nation, the nation of Israel, that's another cosmos, an arrangement of things. Whether they're in order or not, you have puzzles that's out of order. You separate the parts from one puzzle to the other puzzle, and then you have a cosmos. Then you put the pieces together. So Israel was scattered. You have Israelites that say that they're not Israelites, but they're still Israelites. You can tell your mother, look, you ain't my mother, but DNA proves otherwise. Mm-hmm. Just because you say you're not an Israelite doesn't mean that you're not an Israelite. And eventually, all Israel's going to come into this thing. Go ahead.
The inhabitants of the earth, men.
That's oikomeni, so they went off on that.
The human family.
It's not talking about the human family because, like I said, you go to the first couple of definitions, it gives you the answer. Go ahead.
The ungodly multitude.
Well, that could be true because you have the wicked, which is the so-called white man. Mm-hmm. That's a cosmos. Go ahead.
The whole mass of men alienated.
They just went off. Go ahead.
The whole mass of men alienated from God and therefore hostile to the cause of Christ. World affairs, the aggregate of things earthly, the whole circle of earthly goods, endowment, riches, advantages, pleasures, etc., which, although hollow and frail and fleeting, stir desire, seduce from God, and are and are obstacles to the cause of Christ. Any aggregate or general collection of particulars of any sort.
Now when they said that, read that again. They were correct that time.
Any aggregate or general collection of particulars of any sort.
Of particulars of any sort, meaning particulars brought together into one body. Of the same kind. That's it on that?
There's one more. It says the Gentiles as contrast to the Jews.
Well, now let's go to the next one, which is read the 19th and the 20th verse again.
Okay, this is the Pharisees therefore said among themselves, perceive ye how ye prevail nothing? Behold, the world is gone after him.
Those are talking about Israelites, whether they know that they're Israelites or don't know that they're Israelites. They saw that miracle and they followed the Lord. Go ahead.
And there were certain Greeks among them that came up to worship at the feast.
Now they had a feast, and they said there were certain Greeks among them that worshiped at the feast. Now you read that without understanding, and you think it's a bunch of white people. So look up the word Greek.
Yeah, the Greek word there for Greek is,
Strong's G 1672, Hellene. Hellene.
And it says a Greek, either by nationality, whether a native of the mainland or of the Greek islands or colonies. In a wider sense, the name embraces all nations not Jews, that made the language, customs, and learning of the Greeks their own. The primary reference is to a difference of religion and worship.
Yeah, so in other words, you had Israelites that didn't know that they were Jews or Israelites of the 12 tribes that followed the Greek customs. You had Hamites that followed the Greek customs and taught their children that they were Greek. That's why when you look up, when you go back and you look up these icons and these relics during the time of the Greeks, you see these vases with black images on them, especially in the Olympics. These were tall black men that performed in the Olympics. These were, for the most part, Israelites that said that they were Greeks and taught their children that they were Greeks. Okay? So now we understand that the Greeks that followed the Lord in John the 12th chapter and the 20th verse are talking about Israelites. All right? Now let's go from there to Acts the 14th chapter and the first verse.
Acts chapter 14, verse 1. And it came to pass in Iconium that they went both together into the synagogue of the Jews, and so spake that that a great multitude both of the Jews and also of the Greeks believed.
Hold on. What does the Greek? All of a sudden, these Greeks want to believe the Lord, a black man, and the Greeks are white. The Greeks in that verse right there are talking about Israelites. Now, give me Acts 18:4. I'm sorry. Give me Acts 16:1-3.
Acts chapter 16, verse 1. Then came he to Derbe and Lystra, and behold, a certain disciple was there named Timotheus, the son of a certain woman which was a Jewess and believed, but his father was a Greek, which was well reported of by the brethren that were at Lystra and Iconium.
Yeah, this was the father of Timothy, whose mother was a Jewish Israelite, whose father was a Greek. Now, if you read that with no understanding, you're going to picture him being a white man. Okay, well, he was a tear. Well, why would Paul be teaching this guy? Because he wasn't a Greek, and his father wasn't a Greek. When we read the definition of the word Greek, it said anyone outside of the Jews that followed the customs and the language and the practices of Greeks, whether they're actual Greeks or not. All right? Go ahead.
Verse 3. It says, him would Paul have to go forth with him, and took and circumcised him because of the Jews which were in those quarters, for they knew all that his father was a Greek.
Yeah, which was an Israelite that kept Greek customs. And that goes back to, and if we had time, we'll go through that in the Apocrypha. That goes back to how during the time of Antiochus Epiphanes had forced them to not circumcise their children. That's why Paul had Timothy get circumcised, because he wasn't circumcised. Why? Because his father wasn't circumcised. His grandfather wasn't circumcised. All the way back to the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, when they were put to death if they circumcised their children, and they were forced to eat pork, and they were forced to work out in these gyms. The word gymnos, gym come from the Greek word gymnos, which means nakedness. That's why when you go back to those vases of these athletes in the Olympics, they actually perform their games butt naked. And then Esau does that the same. You have these gyms today that you go to, and you got men in the shower and they're all butt naked looking at each other. So, and then you got in these universities, these colleges, mainly these universities, you got blacks that Johnny's the first black, one of our family to go to college. And what does he do? It ain't all complete unless he joins a damn fraternity. Or a black woman joins a sorority. That goes back to the Greeks, because you had Israelites that were following the Greek philosophies. Just like you have the Moors. You have the Moors. There's no such thing as Moors. There's no such thing as Moors. That's a label that was put on Israelites that were living in Spain, for the most part, that embraced the religion of Islam. You can watch a movie called El Cid, starring this guy. I was going to say Sidney Poitier. Sidney Poitier should played Vavigo de Vavar, Rodrigo de Vavar, who was played by Charlton Heston, a so-called Jew. And then you had this other guy, the Emir,